There's something ancient in the way human beings listen to the dark. Long before locks, alarms, and porch lights, we understood that fear rarely arrives screaming. It comes quietly, in the soft click of what's settling after midnight, in the cold seam of air beneath the bedroom door, in the strange feeling that a room has remembered someone you have not. Fog presses against the glass. A hallway holds its breath. A child's toy sits where no one left it. And somewhere, just beyond the reach of the lamp, something waits with the patience of stone. But what happens when the thing watching you does not want to be seen, only felt? What happens when the ordinary world, your home, your street, your own reflection, begins to behave like a witness instead of a shelter? Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. If you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious, you have certainly come to the right place. Because the 7 stories you are about to hear were all carried out of real rooms, real roads, and real nights, and each one leaves behind the same unbearable thought. Some doors do not open outward. Some let something in. The first happened in October 1998 in Whitstable, a wind-bitten seaside town on the coast of Kent, England, where the salt from the harbor seemed to live inside the wallpaper. Elena Ward was 34, an antiques dealer with tired blue eyes and the stubborn calm of someone who had spent her whole life restoring what other people had abandoned. She rented the upper floor of a narrow Victorian terrace on Island Wall, and every evening the house smelled of beeswax, old linen, damp plaster, and the faint medicinal bite of turpentine. Her life was ordinary in all the comforting ways. Tea at 6. Inventory by lamplight. A radio low in the kitchen. On Thursday, October 15th. She brought home a porcelain doll from an estate sale in Canterbury. A German-made child figure from the 1920s with cracked left cheek and human hair the color of smoke. She set it in the front room window. By 10:14 p.m., the doll was facing the chair. Elena told herself the stand was uneven. By morning, it was facing the hall. On October 17th at 11:03 p.m., she woke to 3 soft knocks from downstairs. Not on the door, from inside the house. Her neighbor, Mrs. Finch, heard Elena mention it over the garden wall and told her, very quietly, if that thing belonged to the Havelock house, don't keep it overnight. Elena laughed. She should not have laughed. The second came 9 years later, on January 12, 2007, in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, where winter rain left the road smelling of mud, gasoline, and pine bark. Daniel Ruiz was 29, a parcel driver, recently divorced, the kind of man who stayed moving because stillness gave his thoughts too much room. He lived alone in a rental at the end of Sable Creek Road, beyond the last mailbox, where the woods began immediately and the porch light never seemed to reach the tree line. On the first night at 11:42 p.m., he saw a man standing between 2 sweet gum trees. No coat, no movement, too far away to identify, but close enough to feel deliberate. Daniel assumed it was a hunter or a prank. On the second night, the figure stood nearer, just behind the sagging wire fence, rain shining on its shoulders. On the third night, January 14th, at exactly 11:42 again, the figure was on the porch, visible only when lightning strode the yard white. Daniel yanked open the door with a tire iron in his hand. No one there, only 3 wet shoe prints leading to the living room window, and stopping. In June of 1986, in Lismore, County Waterford, Ireland, the fear arrived in envelopes. Moira Kelleher was 52, a widowed school secretary with a careful posture and a voice so gentle people leaned in to hear her. She lived in a stone cottage outside town where foxgloves grew against the wall and turf smoke clung to the curtains. On June 3rd, a letter appeared on her kitchen table. Though the door had been bolted from inside, it contained only 6 words, written in blue fountain pen ink. I can still see you praying. She told Gardai it was a cruel joke. On June 7th, the second letter came, damp as if carried through rain, with a single Polaroid of her bedroom window taken from the orchard. On June 10th, at 9:18 p.m., the third arrived while she was in the room. No post, no footsteps, just a slow scrape of paper sliding across old wood. Her brother Seamus begged her to stay with family. Whatever it is, he said, it knows the house better than you do. She stayed. At 2:06 the next morning, she heard someone kneel beside her bed and whisper, "You moved the crucifix." Then there was February 1994 in Trois-Rivières, Quebec, where the snowbanks rose taller than fence posts and every breath tasted metallic with cold. 17-year-old Aline Bouchard had taken a babysitting job en route to Forges for a couple attending a winter gala. The house was modern, heated bright, and too silent once the parents left. At 8:30 p.m., the little boy told her, "The woman in the ceiling walks only when I'm awake." Aline smiled the way babysitters do when children say impossible things. At 9:11, there were 3 dull thuds above the den. Pipes, she thought. At 9:47, she found the attic hatch hanging open, though she had watched the father latch it earlier. At 10:02, the house phone rang. When she answered, a woman's voice whispered in French, "Don't let him look up." Aline grabbed the child and stood under the kitchen light until the parents returned at 11:26. Police found no intruder, but in the dust around the attic insulation were bare footprints, small and wet, leading in circles around the hatch. The 5th story unfolded in Sapporo, Japan in November 2011, when the first hard frost turns gutters white, and the air smells like cedar, diesel, and snow coming early. Kenji Sato was 41, an accountant, newly exhausted after months caring for his father through a long decline. He moved into a compact house in Kita Ward because it was cheap and because grief often makes a bargain feel like mercy. The real estate agent mentioned the previous owner had died at home, then immediately apologized, as if the fact itself might linger. On November 21st at 12:13 a.m., Kenji heard someone walking in the attic above his bedroom. 3 steps, pause. 3 steps, pause. Rats, he decided. On November 24th, the steps returned, but this time followed him from room to room, overhead, matching his path exactly. On November 27th, he climbed into the attic with a flashlight and found no animal nests, no footprints, no disturbance at all, except a lacquer household shrine tucked into the insulation, and inside it a family photograph with every face scratched away except one, his own. He left the house before dawn and never slept there again. Not all hauntings stay indoors. In August of 1978, west of Toowoomba, Queensland, truck driver Leon Mercer was hauling refrigerated meat down a Tulane road glazed with moonlight. He was 38, broad-shouldered, practical, and not given to superstition, though men who drive alone at night often collect stories whether they want them or not. At 1:09 a.m., he passed a woman standing barefoot beside mile marker 43, wearing a pale dress stained dark at the hem. He checked his mirror. She was gone. At 1:17, he saw her again 10 kilometers ahead. Same posture, same stillness. At 1:29, she was in the passenger seat, reflected faintly in the side window, hair covering her face, the cab filling with the smell of wet earth and something sweetly rotten, like flowers left too long in heat. Leon slammed the brakes, so hard the trailer jackknifed it into the ditch. When police arrived, he was outside the cab, sobbing and repeating the same sentence to Sergeant Wilkes. She said, "I missed the turn where my son died." Leon had never told anyone that story. By March of 2019, in Krakow, Poland, the horror had learned how to use technology. Marta Zielinska was 31, a pediatric nurse living alone in a 4th-floor apartment off Josepha Dietla Street, where tram bells carried up through the night, and the walls always smelled faintly of cabbage, dust, and old radiator heat. She was efficient, kind, and quietly lonely in the way many night shift workers are, her life divided into fluorescent mornings and sleepless afternoons. On March 8th, she noticed her laptop camera light flicker on for 3 seconds at 3:14 a.m. She assumed it was an update. On March 10th, she found a new folder on her desktop containing 3 webcam images of herself asleep. On March 13th, at 11:58 p.m., an email arrived from an untraceable address with no subject line and one sentence. "I like the way you turned toward the wall before dreaming." Marta went to the police. Cybercrime officers found traces of remote access, but no reliable source. Her friend Piotr, a locksmith, changed a deadbolt and said the kind of thing friends say when they're frightened too. "It's some sad idiot online. Don't give him a legend." But on March 17th, Piotr visited after work and froze in the kitchen doorway. One mug sat on the counter, still warm. Marta had just come home. She had not boiled water. That night, she pushed a chair on the front door, taped over the laptop camera, and left the hallway light on. At 2:21 a.m., 3 knocks sounded from inside her wardrobe. Imagine the scene. A one-room apartment thick with radiator heat. Yet Marta's skin turning cold so fast her teeth touched. The wardrobe doors shivered once. Then again. Then a third time, harder, as if someone inside had lifted a hand and chosen patience over force. She could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the hiss of passing tires on wet cobblestones below, her own pulse drumming in her ears. Piotr whispered, "Call now." But Marta stepped closer, each floorboard complaining beneath her weight. The air smelled wrong, damp wool, metal, and the sharp peppery odor of stress sweat. She reached for the brass handle. For one stretched, impossible second, everything seemed to stop. Breath, thought, time itself. Then her phone lit up in her hand with a live camera notification. Bedroom device active. Marta looked past the wardrobe to the laptop on the table. The camera light was on. A message typed itself across the screen, letter by letter. Don't open it. She did. Inside, hanging from a rail, was only her winter coat, swaying gently. Behind it, nailed to the back panel, was a small black camera angled toward the bed. And from somewhere much closer than the wardrobe, close enough to warm the shell of her ear, a man's voice whispered, "You never look behind you." Piotr turned first. He shouted. Neighbors later said they heard the scream down the stairwell at 2:24 a.m., followed by the sound of a body striking the apartment door. Police found a chain lock broken from the inside, muddy partial prints on the sill of the bathroom window, and fibers, consistent with industrial work gloves. They also recovered months of hidden recordings from the device in the wardrobe, including footage of Marta sleeping, dressing, and once on March 11th, standing still in the middle of the room as if she had sensed someone just outside the frame. No intruder was ever identified. Local papers called him the Watcher of Dietla Street. Marta moved to Gdansk within 6 weeks, left nursing the following year, and told one interviewer in 2022, "The worst part is not knowing when it began. The worst part is understanding that for a long time, home was the safest place only because I had not yet learned the truth. And that is what binds all 7 stories together. A doll that turned, a watcher in the rain, letters that cross a locked room, footsteps overhead, a shrine that recognized a stranger, a dead passenger on an empty road, a camera hidden where winter coats should have been, different towns, different years, different languages for the same old terror. Safety is often a story we tell ourselves because the alternative is too enormous to carry. So the next time a room feels wrong, trust that small ancient bell inside your ribs. The next time someone tells you not to bring a certain object home, or not to answer the late call, or not to ignore the thing you cannot explain, listen. Pride is loud. Instinct speaks quietly. And the quiet voice is usually the one trying to keep you alive. When the house settles tonight, when the hallway cools for no reason, when you check the lock once and then check it again, remember this. Not every presence needs a face, and not every visitor uses a door. Thanks for watching. Stay safe.